This is Stuff You Like, and the Good Omens Amazon Prime adaptation does not make me regret everything, so that's a good start. But mostly it makes me think, let's declare war on good and evil, because good is just as bad as evil? Wait, what? Here be spoilers for both the book and the TV series. You have been warned. Boy, it's been a while since I reviewed anything promptly enough that I needed to say that. I've said in a previous review, which I will link, that Good Omens is a humanist apocalypse, a humanist revelation. And it's a book that values humanity and free will above everything else. Good Omens is a book where a demon becomes more human, an angel becomes more human, the Antichrist is human, and being human is a good thing. But I feel like the Amazon Prime series ends up hammering home, however unintentionally, how that doesn't really fit very well with a worldview that thinks there's such a thing as good and evil. The end of the Good Omens book, and indeed the TV series, is Crowley saying that he thinks that the next great battle will be heaven and hell versus humanity. Now, the spiritual dimension as something that needs to be defeated is something you see in Philip Pullman, though he doesn't go for heaven and hell. He's more like, just let's kill God, which makes sense given his religious views. But the thing is, I think that a lot of people, possibly even most people, believe that there is some objective standard of good and evil that isn't just what human beings can justify to themselves. How much of that is, I am the ultimate arbiter of good and evil, and everything I can justify is obviously right, and everything else that other people do which I don't like is obviously wrong, I'm not sure. But I feel like the kind of outmoded ideas of what's good, which is to say any opinion that I do not currently hold on what is good, are bad in themselves and should be destroyed just as surely as everything that I think is evil is kind of iffy, to be honest. And the idea that the ideal is to be perfectly balanced between heaven and hell, perfectly balanced between dark and light, perfectly balanced between good and evil is actually kind of meh. Doesn't that just make you boring and useless? Isn't that just a bit Brave New World, where everyone's so stoned out of their mind all the time that they can't raise themselves to great acts of good, but can't lower themselves to great acts of evil either? I liked the Good Omens adaptation quite a lot, actually, but the thing that threw me out of it the most was the inclusion of Jesus. Like, the reminder that Jesus exists in the Good Omens universe is enough to make you go, oh, that kinda doesn't really work for me then. The Amazon Prime series, unlike the book, takes us on a tour of various historical and biblical events to give us an idea of the agreement that Crowley and Aziraphale have developed and how that came to be. I particularly loved the Black Knight. But it includes the scene where Crowley and Aziraphale are watching Jesus die on the cross. Now, it's a fairly obvious scene to choose from the New Testament, being one of the most theologically significant ones in there, but if the whole conceit of the novel is that everything in the Bible is not just true, but literally true, from creation to the flood to the Antichrist being like an actual person as opposed to a prophetic representation of bad things that are happening in the 1st century AD, from a literary or cinematic or storytelling standpoint, I feel like they'd have been better off not bringing Jesus into it, because it just reminds us that he's not there for the rest of it. Like, by the rules of the universe, he exists and is canonically God, and everything that was said about him in the Bible is true. In the book they talk about the Almighty a lot, and in the TV series as well, but Jesus doesn't really get a mention. The whole book is about the Antichrist, but aside from an incident where Aziraphale possesses a televangelist who has written songs like Jesus is my buddy, we don't mention why there is an Antichrist at all, which is kind of necessary in literary terms, because if you do mention Jesus and you get people thinking about the theological significance of Jesus, then the whole thing kind of falls apart a little bit. A god who takes human form and endures human mockery and torture and death in order to save humanity doesn't really fit with the heaven is principally composed of self-righteous jerks who remind you of jobs worth in insurance companies vibe that they're going for. Still, I did enjoy the series a lot, and boy, it has really, really made me miss David Tennant. I'm not even joking. There are a lot of things in it I would have done differently. I felt Gabriel's overbearing, purple-eyed Americanness was a bit too on the nose. I would definitely not have added the bit where Heaven and Hell try to kill Az and Crowley. Like, that just felt over the top. But as you would expect from Neil Gaiman being directly involved in it, it is a pretty faithful adaptation. The most noticeable cut for me was Greasy Johnson and the Johnsonites. And even then, you only really notice their absence when Adam talks about seeing whose gang is best when he's confronting the Four Horsemen. I feel like it still works without them, because you get his point, even if you haven't had an explicit example of what he means. And I really did like the addition of the speech to Satan at the end. You're not my dad, indeed. I like that the actors for the angels are mixed sex, because, you know, angels don't have sex, biologically speaking. Unless they try really hard. I enjoyed them fighting the Four Horsemen. I loved Crowley's Bentley. I thought his snake eyes were a good touch. His red hair mostly didn't look terrible. And Az and Crowley on screen. Oh, a joy. Such great chemistry. And it is really wonderful to have some of your favourite scenes from books brought to life on the screen and see them just how you imagined them. Like that paintballing scene, for one. Anathema's bicycle accident. Anathema was great, by the way. Just really loved her. I found Shadwell's accent really strange. I don't know. But as adaptations go, there have been many worse ones. So if you have seen the Amazon Prime adaptation of Good Omens, let me know, tell me what you thought. If you haven't seen it, I hope you've at least read the book so that I haven't spoiled it horribly for you. If you'd like to see more content like this, you should subscribe, and in any case, I will see you next time.